Apologies if I've used this story before, but there comes a point where you can't remember what you've shared with different people, so sorry. But when I was in year 13, which is 7th form in Old Money, part of the English curriculum for the year was to do a 3-minute-ish speech on a topic of your choice in front of the class. As it so happened, as I was prepping and this story had popped into my head, a good friend from high school posted this picture on Facebook, and this is my 7th form year outside our common room. We are a bright bunch full of hope. So there we go. Yes? Where's Wally? Where's Wally? Well, I'll share where Wally is in a second. Yeah, I was surprised. So I noticed that young people today have many more opportunities to present in front of groups as part of the kind of normal rhythm of their school days, their school life. But in the olden days, it was the first time that I had to do any kind of speech in front of any group, any class, and it froze me really cold. And in the end, partly because I was still salty that my sports mad school had not let me do Latin in 7th form, I came up with this 3-minute diatribe about the dangers of sports. So sorry, sports crew down the back. Right down to the level of the different types of fungus that you could catch on the exercise bikes in the gym. So there we go. Somehow it landed okay and great. I thought, job done. And next week, my English teacher took me aside. She said, we're asking a few people to do their speeches again in front of the whole 7th form, and would you do yours again? And though I was really flattered, I just point blank refused in that moment. And she was really kind. She understood that it would have been too much, because I always was a shy and awkward kid. And coming back to where is Wally in this photo, for a long time I couldn't even find myself, and I had assumed that actually I'd opted out of the photo, which would have been a legitimate Rebecca tactic at the time. But I did find myself. I am the one in brown, in the centre, sort of left of the surfer chick / guy in pink, and I'm looking down at the ground. You know, that is just so me in 7th form at that moment. So fast forward some 30 odd years, and you find me here, regularly having to get up in front of people and share things. So I just think God has a really funny sense of humour. And the reason I share this is because as I sat with today's passage, although it is so much about sight, I felt that it's also just as much about the transforming power of God to give people a voice. And this is a long passage, but I think it's worth looking at as a whole, which is why we did it today. And I've also printed off copies of it so you can have it in front of you as you go along. So there should be some bits of paper in front of you in various pews if you need it. But we're going to go through it. We're going to draw out some of the ways that we see kingdom transformation in just one person's life, someone who could so easily have been forgotten, but whose story we still share in today. That's pretty amazing. So Jesus is walking along, and as usual, Jesus is interruptible. And we first meet our hero of the story, our blind man, and he's not acknowledged, rather he is talked about. He's an object that's used to explore a theological concept. And in Jesus' time and in many cultures and ages since, to have a physical or mental disability is connected with the moral fault of the individual or the family. So that's why the disciples are asking, whose fault is it that this man is born blind? Is it his fault? Is it his parents' fault? And Jesus makes it clear that it is neither. And then we hear another idea that's been used and misused, often in Christian circles, to help people make sense of disability. Rather, says Jesus, his disability is present so that God can work through him, which has been damagingly interpreted often as if it's God's will that the man is blind. And Jesus follows by saying, we must do God's works with urgency. And it's here we find the true meaning of this passage. And some translations use I instead of we to make it really clear. In this moment, Jesus knows that it's his job to see the person who is right in front of him. And then Jesus takes it big. He says, one of the great I am statements that we hear in John's Gospel. I am the light of the world. The one who was present at the beginning of all things, the true light coming into the world, is here to fulfill the really practical restoration of bodies, of minds, of hearts, that we hear prophesied about in Isaiah 35. Then the eyes of the blind will be opened and the ears of the deaf unstopped. And so we journey back to Genesis as Jesus takes mud, the stuff of earth and creation, he mixes it with his own spit, and then he places it on the man's eyes. And spitting was considered offensive at the time, as it often is now, but it was also believed that saliva had curative properties at the time. But as I said, don't try that at home. But healing doesn't even happen yet. This is not the moment. And in fact, this is one of the few times where Jesus doesn't actually ask the person if they want to be healed. Once again, the man is being done to. But his agency is still present because the final part of the picture is the man's yes. It takes the man's obedience to go to the pool, to respond to the instruction. And Siloam actually means sent. He is obedient to that instruction of being sent. And at that point, that's where the healing takes place. So Jesus carries on his journey and he's gone from the picture. And the man's community starts to notice something is different. Isn't this the blind beggar? His own community barely recognises him. He has been invisible. He has been out of sight. Yes, it's me, he says. Jesus did it. And his community take him to the people that they think are able to make sense of what has happened. The Pharisees, who we hear ask the man all about it. And his answer is simple. He put mud on my eyes, and I washed, and now I see. But their main concern is not around what happened to the individual. It's about the rules because it happened on the Sabbath, when all mahi is forbidden by religious law. So how could this be from God, they ask, if it happened on the Sabbath? And for what is probably one of the first times in his life, this man is now asked for his opinion. What do you think happened? In this moment, he is given a voice. Yet they don't believe his call that Jesus is a prophet, and they ask his parents. So you remember that stigma of sin that the disciples mentioned earlier, that the parents, just as much as the person, could be blamed for illness or disability. So I just feel for the parents in this moment that it's actually quite understandable that they are afraid of being rejected even further by their community. But in doing so, they deny their own voice and they deny their agency. Ask him yourself, they say. He's old enough. And it's this coming interaction next that I love most. The man is asked again, tell the truth, what happened? And as Cody he did a great job for us, the man loses the plot. This is the man who's had no voice, he's been objectified, he's been unrecognised, and he speaks with power and authority and no small degree of exasperation. I've told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to be his disciples too? And it's just that little word that for me is at the real heart of this story. It's the word too. This man has discovered his own voice. He's discovered his true identity. His restoration has taken place inside and out. A man who's been marginalised, ignored, discounted, and invisible. In that single word, the word too, he's claiming that not only have I been healed physically, but I have found the one whom I will pin my whole life on. I have found the light that I'm going to follow. So even before he has seen Jesus again, he's already declared his allegiance in front of his whole community. God has not coerced him into anything. He's not forced him to go to the pool. And yet this man has decided to declare that he is a disciple of Jesus. And he doesn't even stop there. He goes on to claim a role of spiritual authority as he then teaches the Pharisees what they can't see. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind, he says. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. And now he's rejected from his community, but on his own terms. And remember, at this point, this man has had no reassurance from Jesus that Jesus will be his rabbi, that he will be able to apprentice to Jesus, or even that Jesus is the Messiah. But Jesus doesn't disappoint, and he finds him. And there's that beautiful moment of face-to-face intimacy where the creator meets the created, and that relationship is sealed, and any spiritual blindness the man has falls away. Then the man said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. How lucky is this guy? He gets to meet Jesus face to face, and there's no doubt for him about who Jesus is. He's in the most beautiful place of inner and outer vision being aligned, and I'm actually really jealous of him. But I wonder, are there parts of our spiritual lives where we feel blind, where we feel like our faith in Jesus is blocked, where we long for him just to show up and reveal to us what is uncovered? So my encouragement for you this week is just to spend some time imagining yourself as the blind man. Place yourself in the story and bring to Jesus what you long to have light shone on. And just remember too Jesus' words of encouragement as Thomas encounters the risen Jesus. Blessed are those who have not seen and have still believed. I just really believe that Jesus knows how hard it is when we can't see him in a physical way. Before I close, though, I just want to touch on one further thing, which I do really believe is an opportunity for us as Jesus people to bring light. Many of us are familiar with the government's proposed Move On legislation, which seeks to give police power to move on unhoused people in our streets by fining and trespassing the homeless. And I just think this particular piece of legislation is particularly blind because it doesn't give adequate additional attention to the problems that result in people being unhoused in the first place. And I just think if we learn anything from the story of the blind man today, it is that Jesus sees, and that we as his people should see too. Because being seen gives you a voice. And if people are moved on, how can we hear their voices? How can they gain confidence in themselves and their identities as loved and valued? And how can true relationship be built? But to close up, just remembering the story I told at the start about my shy and awkward 7th form self, I truly believe that it's only through the work of the Holy Spirit, just gradually and gently in my life, that I've been helped to understand how God truly sees me, that I've come to understand that I have a voice in my own small way. And I just am amazed by how much confidence God has given ordinary men and women like you and me over the centuries to effect kingdom change in his name. That same power given to the blind man is the same power that we have too. So when we know our true identities as children of God, the power of God at work among us is immense. He is just waiting for our yes. Amen.